Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, Master of None here. Today we are jumping into PvP with the Harbinger to see which of the two specs will make it to the next round. If this is the first time that you are tuning into the series, I won't explain all the rules of this competition in this video in order to not bore my other viewers to death. Instead, I'll put the link to the first video on the screen right now, so you can go check it out if you're interested. This means we are jumping straight into preparation. I copied the Harbinger build from Meta Battle and read through all the traits and skills of the build. My first observations are as follows. It will be important to keep in mind that Shroud is no longer a second health bar. This will undoubtedly mess me up because I'm so used to just being able to sit in Shroud when things get dicey. It also seems that most of our power and damage is in fact in Shroud. By going into it, we weaken enemies, transfer conditions, can corrupt wounds with skill 2 and pulse quickness to ourselves and allies. And lastly, I will want to try to pay attention to the blight mechanic. Whenever I'm in Shroud or throw elixirs on myself, I build up blight, which makes me a lot squishier by lowering my max HP. However, Shroud skill 3 and 4 will do more damage when above 5 or 10 blight stacks respectively. On top of that, they will also remove that amount of blight stacks. Same goes for my elixirs. Just like the Vindicator, there is a lot more going on, but these are the new things that I should pay attention to. If you haven't played Necro before, another great thing to keep in mind is that you have tons of skills that transfer and remove conditions, like Staff 4, Dagger 4, going into Shroud, and Spectral Walk. Honestly, I was a bit nervous going into the unranked warm-up game since the Vindicator games really didn't go all too well. At this point, I was even doubting if I could make a video series out of this, or if I'll just lose every single game with all the specs. Lo and behold, our luck doesn't seem to be on our side. We start the game 4 versus 5. At this point, I'm really starting to think the series is jinxed. Since it's unranked anyway, I just go straight to mid, to at least get a feel for the skills. Harbinger felt strong immediately. Part of it is definitely that it feels familiar. Having double the base HP compared to Vindicator definitely helped as well. But the other part is that the Shroud is so much fun to use. You have tons of mobility, great damage, and you feel super fast thanks to the quickness. And the float on Shroud 5 is awesome. As expected, I did not really manage to play around Blight and was using the skills more for their base effect. Anyway, after about halfway, our 5th guy finally manages to spawn in. I assume that player wanted to switch characters and got stuck in the endless loading screen bug that is in the game currently, and we end up winning pretty hard. It was a really unbalanced game, just like the warm-up game on Vindicator, only this time, luck was on our side. We were already creeping up on points, and when that last person finally loaded in, we went straight for the win. After a successful game like that, how can you not be excited to jump into ranked? We started off with a pretty decent mid-fight. I get focused a couple times but managed to avoid most of the damage by playing around the edges and using my Shroud CC defensively and deal heavy counter pressure. I just can't stress enough how much fun the Harbinger Shroud is to use, especially for cleaving out down bodies. You can wipe a whole team by landing a good Shroud 5 while they are trying to get a res, and your team can pump damage into them. It feels quite similar to Reaper in this regard, but the playstyle feels a lot riskier. You'll also see me make use of my worm to escape death a couple times. The game was super close, but ultimately we sadly end up losing. It came down to miscommunication and a lot of over-rotation. Nonetheless, it was a very enjoyable game, so I was happy to queue again. Somehow we always get the same map twice in a row. This time we face off against two power-based rangers, which is awful for Harbinger. I spent all game trying to survive and kite, but if they would land just one stun while I was in Shroud, it basically meant game over. As you probably just saw, we were heavily outclassed. I tried to regroup after the lost mid-fight at home in the beginning, but even that we couldn't manage. No one tried to peel for one another and everyone seemed to be playing their own free-for-all game. I also noticed that I never think of Spectral Walk as an amazing condition cleanse. Instead I just think about it as a juking tool and stun breaking. So on an individual level, I definitely want to take that forward. Anyway, we end up losing hard, like 500 to 100 points. Before we move on to the outcome of the first battle, let's rate the spec on my 3 criterias. I give Harbinger 3 out of 5 stars. I still felt reasonably tanky despite the blight mechanic. Having 34k base health is quite a lot and you have a lot of CC to pressure your enemy. A stun on Pistol 3, Fear on Staff 5, Daze on Shroud 4 and the big AoE float on Shroud 5. However, it's definitely a lot more punishing compared to the other Necro specs. Using Shroud comes with a big trade-off, namely not having access to your utility skills. Now, this is no different than to Core Necro or Reaper, but with those specs your Shroud acts as a second HP bar. The risk-reward factor of Harbinger feels way higher because of this, and the biggest weakness of Necromancer, namely getting CC'd while in Shroud, is even more pronounced as a Harbinger. Skill ceiling. 4 out of 5 stars. It might not be super hard to pick up, however, it will take quite some time until you can manage the blight mechanic, using all your boon corrupts and condition transfers, and actually survive when getting focused. The key to Harbinger's survivability is just like Core Necro, heavily dependent on how well you kite. You have some amazing tools at hand with Flashworm and Spectral Wall to juke your enemies, but it will take some practice to use those tools effectively. It's maybe a bit late into the video, but if you're still watching and enjoying it, please hit that like button, it helps the channel a lot. Moving on to the last point, excitement. This is a straight up perfect score, 5 stars. I always liked the edgy classes, and although I found the other Necro specs reasonably fun to play, they never fully clicked with me or got me addicted. I like the durability and the amount of condition transfers Necro has, since I hate dying to condis, but it just always felt so slow to me, as if I'm playing in slow motion. In comes the Harbinger, basically my dream spec. All the stuff that I like from Necro mixed with mobility and speed. I also love how aggressive you can play and how both of your weapon sets have just so much utility. It gives this really nice flow to combat, dipping in and out of Harbinger Shroud at the right time. I felt effective, but simultaneously I noticed so many layers on where I could improve, which just got me more excited. Alright, it's time to crown the winner of the first matchup, Vindicator versus Harbinger. To recap last video, we lost the warm-up game, lost the first ranked match and won the second. In this episode, we won the warm-up, but then lost 2 ranked games in a row. So by the rules of the game, and with a heavy heart, the spec that goes to the next round is the Vindicator. even though I felt way more effective on Harbinger. I'm curious to see if I'll warm up to the Vindicator if I play it some more, when we have found a worthy opponent for it. Hopefully you guys already voted on the first video, on which of the two specs will go at each other the next time. I'll also mention every now and again that you can support the channel directly if you want by joining and becoming a member. However, subscribing, liking and commenting is already super valuable to me, so thank you. With that being said, I hope to see you in the next one.